Dr. Rachel Green, director of the Galactic Cooperation Institute, documented these changes from her office on Earth. She was an anthropologist who had spent her career studying how different cultures learn to work together. Now she was watching the largest cultural transformation in galactic history. Art, music, and literature are flourishing, she wrote in her daily report. Species that were forbidden from expressing themselves creatively under the Council are now producing works of beauty that inspire beings across the galaxy. The report included examples that would have amazed the old Council leaders. Hegemony warriors were writing poetry. Crystal Empire engineers were composing symphonies. Even the insectoid swarm had begun creating collective artworks that told the story of their liberation. The diversity that the Council had tried to crush was now driving innovation and cultural exchange at a pace that nobody had thought possible. But perhaps the most important change was happening in the hearts and minds of individual beings throughout the galaxy. On the mining world of Tarkos VII, former slave Kethmore now served as the elected governor of his planet. He stood at the window of his office looking out at mines that had once been prisons, but were now cooperatives owned by the workers themselves. "My children will never know slavery," he said to his aide, a young Zalani named Peltara. "They will grow up free, able to choose their own paths in life." Peltara smiled. She was part of the first generation of Zalani to be born free in over 300 years. "What will you tell them about the humans who freed us?" Kethmore thought about that question for a long moment. "I will tell them that humans taught us something important. I will tell them that freedom is not something you are given. It is something you fight for every day in small ways and large ones." The greatest symbol of the galaxy's transformation was Harmony Station, a massive space station built in orbit around Earth. The station served as headquarters for the Galactic Cooperation Institute, but it was more than just a government building. It was a symbol of what different species could accomplish when they worked together. Admiral Jake Martinez, now head of the Terran Diplomatic Corps, stood on the station's observation deck looking out at the stars. He was the same man who had first met the aliens on their space station more than 2 years ago, but the galaxy around him had changed completely. Ships from dozens of different worlds docked at Harmony Station every day. The corridors were filled with beings who had once been enemies, now working together on projects that benefited everyone. The station itself had been built using technology and ideas contributed by every major species in the galaxy. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" said a voice behind him. Jake turned to see Dr. Amy Foster, the medical officer who had served with him on the USS Defiance during that first diplomatic mission. She was now the head of the Galactic Health Organization, working to share medical knowledge between species. "I never imagined it would turn out like this," Jake admitted. "When we first met the aliens, I thought we were looking at the end of human civilization." Amy smiled. "Instead, we were looking at the beginning of galactic civilization. Real civilization, not the fake kind the Council tried to build." Jake nodded and activated his personal computer to record his final log entry. As a military commander, tomorrow he would officially retire from the Navy and begin working full-time as a diplomat. The war was over, and it was time to focus on building peace. Personal log, Admiral Jake Martinez, stardate 23/87/56, he began. "Today marks the end of my military career and the beginning of something new for both humanity and the galaxy." He paused, looking out at the stars that had once threatened his world but now shone peacefully in the darkness. "The aliens thought our military was a joke because we fought with emotion rather than logic. They never understood that our emotions, love for freedom, compassion for the oppressed, and willingness to sacrifice for others, were not weaknesses to overcome, but strengths that made victory inevitable. Ships passed by the observation window, their running lights creating patterns of beauty against the starfield. Each ship carried beings who were free to choose their own destinations, their own futures, their own dreams. The stars are silent. Now, Jake continued, not because they are dead, but because they finally know peace. The galaxy has learned that true strength comes not from advanced technology or superior numbers, but from the courage to fight for principles greater than oneself. He smiled as he watched a group of children from different species playing together in the station's recreation area. They were the future. Beings who would grow up in a galaxy where cooperation was normal and warfare was just something their parents remembered from the old days. In underestimating humanity's military, the Galactic Council discovered too late that they had challenged not just Earth's weapons, but the human spirit itself. And the human spirit, once awakened to the cause of freedom, cannot be defeated. Jake closed his computer and took one last look at the stars. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as the galaxy continued to learn how to live in peace. There would be problems to solve, conflicts to mediate, and always the need to remain vigilant against those who might try to rebuild the old systems of oppression. But tonight, for the first time in his adult life, Jake Martinez could look at the stars and see not threats or enemies, but neighbors and friends. The galaxy was finally free, and it was beautiful. Oh, not understand what they are fighting against. The broadcasts continued for hours, showing video footage of human victories across the galaxy. They showed alien soldiers surrendering rather than face human tactics. They showed liberated worlds, where former slaves were building their own governments. Most importantly, they showed that humans were not monsters. They were liberators who treated prisoners with kindness and helped former enemies rebuild their lives. The psychological attack worked better than any weapon. Within 6 hours, riots began in the crystal cities of Vex Prime. Alien civilians who had lived their entire lives believing in the Council's superiority suddenly realized that their leaders were not invincible. "The humans are offering surrender terms," reported Admiral Zethkar's aide as chaos erupted in the Council chambers. "They say they will spare the planet if the government surrenders unconditionally." "Never!" screamed Queen Hesrak. "We are the masters of the galaxy. We do not surrender to inferior species." "Then we will show them what inferior species can do," said Admiral Zethkar quietly. But the final battle of Vex Prime was not decided by weapons or tactics. It was decided by a single question asked by a human soldier to an alien commander. "Commander, Alex Johnson had led a small team to the council building through maintenance tunnels that the aliens did not know existed. They found Admiral Zethkar in his command center surrounded by guards who were too frightened to fight." "Why?" Zethkar asked as human Marines pointed their weapons at him. "How can a species so young and primitive prove impossible to defeat?" Alex looked at the broken alien commander with something almost like pity. "Because we never stopped learning how to fight," he said. "You and your people eliminated war from your societies because you thought it made you civilized. But you also eliminated the drive to adapt, to overcome, to never give up no matter how bad things get." He gestured toward his Marines, men and women who had followed him through battles that should have killed them all. "Every human in this room has ancestors who fought impossible odds and won. We carry that in our blood. We fight not just with our weapons, but with our hearts." Zethkar stared at the human commander for a long moment. Then slowly he removed his ceremonial sword and laid it on the ground. "I surrender," he said. "Not just for myself, but for all the forces under my command." The war was over. The Galactic Council's empire, built over 1,000 years of conquest and oppression, had fallen to a species that had learned to travel between stars less than a decade ago. As news of the surrender spread across the galaxy, celebrations began on 1,000 worlds. Species that had been slaves for centuries were free. The age of the Council was over. But for humans, the real work was just beginning. Winning the war had been the easy part. Now they had to build a galaxy where freedom could survive. 1 year. After the fall of the Galactic Council, the galaxy was a different place. The silence that filled space between the stars was not the silence of death, but the silence of peace. Captain Steve Davis walked through the corridors of the USS Harmony, one of dozens of human ships now serving as peacekeepers throughout galactic space. Steve was a former teacher who had joined the Navy when the war began. Now he was helping to build something that had never existed before, a galaxy where all species could live free. "Captain," called Lieutenant Mark Johnson from the bridge, "we're receiving a welcome message from the Kepler 442b colony. There, ready for the trade negotiations." Steve nodded and looked out at the stars. Each point of light represented worlds where former slaves were learning to govern themselves. It was not always easy. Freedom was harder than slavery in many ways, because free beings had to make their own choices and accept responsibility for their mistakes. But it was worth the difficulty. The transformation of galactic civilization was most visible on Haven Prime, a neutral world that had been chosen as the site for the first interspecies assembly. The planet's conference center was filled with delegates from 47 different species, all working together to write the laws that would govern their new democracy. Ambassador Michelle Torres represented Earth at the assembly. She was a former diplomat who had spent years learning alien languages and customs. Her job was to help former enemies learn to work together as equals. "The proposal from the Zalani delegation is interesting," she said as she addressed the assembly. "They want to establish trade routes that benefit all species equally rather than just the strongest ones." The debate that followed would have been impossible under the old council system. Species that had been slaves for centuries were now arguing with their former masters about economics and politics. Sometimes the arguments got heated, but nobody reached for weapons. They used words instead. That was progress. Not all of the changes were easy to accept. Former Admiral Zethkar sat in a small office on his home world, working as a liaison between humans and his own people. The hegemony warrior who had once conquered worlds now spent his days helping his species learn democratic government. "It is difficult," he admitted to the human advisor sitting across from him. "My people were bred for war and conquest. Now we must learn to find purpose in building rather than destroying." The human advisor was Dr. Patricia Wong, a sociologist, who specialized in helping societies transition from dictatorship to democracy. She had worked with former enemies all across the galaxy, teaching them that strength could be used to protect rather than conquer. "Change is always hard," she said, kindly. "But your people are learning. The democratic elections you held last month were peaceful. Your representatives are working well with the other species in your sector?" Zethkar nodded slowly. His red eyes, once filled with the pride of conquest, now showed something different. Hope, perhaps. Or maybe it was relief that the burden of constant warfare had finally been lifted from his shoulders. The most dramatic changes were happening in space itself. Trade routes that had once been protected by military force now relied on cooperation between species. Ships that had once carried weapons now carried goods, ideas, and passengers traveling between worlds for business or pleasure. But now, for the first time in galactic history, the slaves were fighting back, and they were winning. On Kepler 438b, a world that had been enslaved for 300 years, the local population watched in amazement as human ships landed in their cities. The aliens who had ruled them for so long ran away or surrendered without a fight. An old alien named Threepko hobbled up to Marine Sergeant Lisa Yang as she stood guard outside the former government building. Threepko had lived his entire life under hegemony rule and had never seen his oppressors defeated. "Are you really going to free us?" he asked in broken English. Lisa looked at the old alien with kind eyes. "That's why we're here," she said. "Nobody should have to live as a slave." Threepko began to cry, not from sadness, but from joy. For the first time in his long life, he was free. Across the galaxy, the impossible was happening. The Galactic Council's empire was falling apart as world after world was liberated by human forces. Species that had been slaves for centuries were remembering what it felt like to make their own choices. And it was all because a primitive species from a small blue planet refused to give up when stronger enemies told them to surrender. The aliens had made one crucial mistake. They thought that being advanced meant being civilized. They thought that being civilized meant avoiding conflict. Humans knew better. Sometimes the most civilized thing you can do is fight for what's right. The Galactic Council's emergency meeting was not the calm, orderly gathering they were used to. For the first time in their 1,000-year history, the great rulers of the galaxy were afraid. Admiral Zethkar stood before the council with his forearms shaking. His once proud uniform was torn and dirty from battle. The other council members looked at him with expressions of disbelief and growing terror. "Explain to us again," said Queen Hasarak, her insect-like voice sharp with anger, "how a primitive species with inferior technology has destroyed half our fleets." Zethkar's red eyes were haunted by memories of battles that should never have been lost. "They do not fight as we expected," he said quietly. "They do not follow any military doctrine we understand. They attack from directions we never considered. They use weapons we never prepared for." Commander Veltosh's crystal body flickered between colors as his emotions changed rapidly. "Impossible. We have studied warfare for millennia. We have conquered hundreds of worlds." "Not like this," Zethkar replied. "We conquered civilized species who fought with honor and followed the rules of war. These humans, they make their own rules. They change tactics in the middle of battle. They turn our own weapons against us." The truth was spreading across the galaxy like a plague. Human strike forces, now equipped with captured alien technology, improved by human engineering, operated throughout Council space with complete freedom. Wherever they went, alien forces either fled or surrendered. Commander Alex Johnson stood on the bridge of the INS Liberation, a captured hegemony dreadnought that human engineers had transformed into something the aliens had never seen before. The ship still looked alien on the outside, but inside it was pure human innovation. "Weapons Officer Jenny Clark," Alex called to a young woman with short brown hair and quick hands. "What's our status on the new hybrid weapons?" Jenny smiled as she checked her instruments. "The plasma cannons are now loaded with depleted uranium cores. The energy shields have been modified to work with our kinetic barriers. And the best part, we've figured out how to make their own defensive systems attack them. Engineer Chief Matt Rodriguez, a stocky man with calloused hands who had once fixed cars on Earth, looked up from his console. The alien computer systems are so standardized that once you hack one, you can hack them all. Their security was designed to stop energy attacks, not computer viruses written by humans. Intelligence analyst Grace Wong, a quiet woman who saw patterns that others missed, studied the star charts showing enemy positions. "Commander," she said, "the swarm collective is beginning to fragment. Individual hive clusters are surrendering rather than fight us." Alex nodded grimly. The insectoid swarm had been one of the Council's most feared military forces. Their hive mind allowed perfect coordination between millions of warriors, but it also meant that when one hive experienced the terror of fighting humans, all the others felt it too. Fear was spreading through the hive mind faster than their ships could retreat. On Earth, President Linda Howard addressed the United Nations in an emergency session. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes, but her voice was strong as she spoke to representatives from every nation on the planet. 6 months ago," she said, "we were told to surrender to aliens who saw us as primitive slaves. Today, those same aliens are begging us for mercy. The question we face now is not whether we can win this war, but what kind of galaxy we want to build when it's over." Defense Secretary Robert Clark, a former general with a reputation for strategic brilliance, stood up to present the military situation. Admiral Williams reports that we now control 47 star systems. The alien resistance is collapsing faster than our computers can track. "What about casualties?" asked the representative from China. "Surprisingly light," Robert replied. "The aliens seem more interested in running away than fighting. Most of their worlds surrender as soon as our ships arrive." The president nodded thoughtfully. "The real question is what we do with all these liberated worlds. We didn't start this war to become conquerors ourselves." The answer to that question was being decided in battles across the galaxy. The siege of Vex Prime, the Council's capital, world, would determine the future of galactic civilization. General Chris Martinez commanded the human orbital forces surrounding the crystal planet. He was Admiral Kate Williams' younger brother, a man who had learned strategy from studying Earth's greatest military minds. His ships formed a perfect blockade around Vex Prime, but they were not attacking. "Sir," asked Captain Janet Foster, "when do we begin the bombardment?" Chris shook his head. "We're not here to destroy the planet," he said. "We're here to show them that resistance is hopeless. Let them see our ships. Let them count our weapons. Let them understand that we could destroy their world in an hour if we wanted to." "And if they don't surrender?" Chris smiled. "Then, Colonel, Diana Foster's ground forces will show them what happens when humans get serious about winning." Colonel Diana Foster was no relation to Captain Janet Foster, despite sharing a name. She was a small, fierce woman who had commanded special forces on 3 different continents before joining the Space Marines. Her troops were positioned on the moons around Vex Prime, ready to launch the most complex military operation in human history. "Remember," she told her battalion commanders over the radio, "we're not just fighting for Earth anymore. Every species in the galaxy is watching this battle. If we win, the age of slavery ends forever. If we lose—" She did not need to finish the sentence. Everyone knew what would happen if humans failed now. The battle for Vex Prime began not with explosions or laser beams, but with something the aliens had never experienced: psychological warfare. Human hackers, led by a former computer programmer named Kevin Walsh, broke into the planet's communication systems and began broadcasting messages in every alien language. The messages were simple but devastating. "Citizens of Vex Prime," the broadcasts said, "your government has lied to you. Humans are not primitive savages. We are a species that has spent 10,000 years learning how to fight for freedom. Your military cannot protect you because they die." The news traveled faster than light itself. Across the galaxy, species that had been slaves for hundreds of years heard the impossible story. Humans had fought the hegemony and won. On the mining world of Tarkos VII, a Zalani worker named Kethmore stopped digging and looked up at the gray sky. His people had been slaves so long that most had forgotten what freedom felt like. But now, for the first time in generations, Kethmore allowed himself to hope. "Is it true?" whispered his friend Yelnara as they worked side by side in the deep mines. "Did the humans really beat a hegemony fleet?" Kethmore nodded. The story had spread through the slave quarters like wildfire. A species that had only learned to travel between stars a few years ago had destroyed more than half of Fleet Commander Korthon's armada. "If humans can fight them," Kethmore said quietly, "maybe we can too." Back in Earth's solar system, Admiral Kate Williams stood in the command center of Harmony Station, humanity's new military headquarters. She was a tough woman with short blonde hair and steel-gray eyes who had commanded submarines before joining the Space Navy. Around her, officers worked at computers and communication panels, coordinating humanity's rapidly growing fleet. "Commander Nick Thompson," she called to her. "Chief of Staff, what's our ship count?" Nick was a tall man with kind eyes who had once been a teacher before the war began. He looked at his tablet and smiled. 67 ships, Admiral. 30 of them are captured alien vessels that our engineers have figured out how to fly." Kate nodded with satisfaction. Human engineers were very good at taking apart alien technology and making it work better. They did not just copy what they found, they improved it, changed it, and made it fit human needs. "What about the alien prisoners who want to help us?" Kate asked. "We have almost 200 of them now," Nick replied. "Most of them are lower ranking, soldiers who are tired of fighting for the hegemony. They say they want to fight for freedom instead of conquest." Navigation Officer Lucy Martinez looked up from her star charts. She was a young woman with dark hair and bright eyes who could plot courses through space that seemed impossible to follow. "Admiral," she said, "we have confirmed target coordinates for Saphira Prime." Kate studied the holographic display that showed the Crystal Empire's fortress world. Saphira Prime was supposed to be unbeatable, a planet covered with crystal cities and protected by orbital defenses that had never been defeated. General Paul Carter's Marines are ready for the ground. "Assault," Kate said. "It's time to show the galaxy that humans don't just defend their homes. We fight for other people's freedom, too." The attack on Saphira Prime began 3 days later. General Paul Carter was a big man with scars on his face and hands that told stories of battles on a dozen worlds. He had learned to fight in Earth's bloodiest wars, and now he was teaching aliens what human warfare really meant. "Remember," he told his Marines as their ships approached the crystal planet, "these aliens have never faced an enemy like us. They build their cities like works of art. They fight like they're dancing. Show them what happens when art meets war." The Crystal Empire's defenses were beautiful to look at. Towers of living crystal reached toward the sky, each one perfectly shaped and glowing with inner light. Energy shields covered the cities like soap bubbles made of starlight. Plasma cannons that could melt steel were hidden inside walls that looked like giant gems. It was all very pretty. It was also completely Useless against humans who had learned to fight dirty, Captain Ben Foster led the first wave of Marines down to the planet's surface. His men and women landed far from the crystal cities, in empty areas where the aliens would not expect an attack. They carried equipment that seemed primitive compared to alien technology: welding torches, chemical explosives, and simple cutting tools. "The aliens think like engineers," Foster told his squad leaders. "Everything has to be perfect. Everything has to be beautiful. They build their defenses to stop energy weapons and guided missiles." He held up a simple crowbar and smiled. "But they never planned for this." The crystal walls that protected the alien cities were strong enough to stop plasma cannons, but they were brittle, like all crystals. When human Marines hit them with sledgehammers and crowbars, the beautiful walls cracked and fell apart. The alien defenders inside the cities had been trained to fight formal battles with energy weapons. They wore armor designed to stop laser beams and carried shields that could deflect plasma bolts. None of their equipment worked against humans who threw hand grenades and shot bullets. "This is not how war is supposed to work," screamed Commander Zeftel as human Marines stormed through his command center. His beautiful crystal armor was useless against soldiers who fought with shotguns and combat knives. "War isn't supposed to be fair," said Sergeant Danny Moore before he knocked the alien commander unconscious with the butt of his rifle. The battle for Saphira Prime lasted only 2 days. When it was over, the crystal cities were free, and their people were learning what it meant to make their own choices. Dr. Karen Walsh stood in the ruins of the Crystal Empire's main library, studying alien books and records. She was a xenobiologist who had spent her life learning about different species. What she found in the alien records shocked her. "Admiral Williams," she said over the radio, "you need to see this. These aliens haven't fought a real war in over 800 years. Kate's voice crackled through the communicator. "What do you mean?" "I mean they forgot how," Karen explained. "Look at these military manuals. They're all about formations and procedures and following rules. There's nothing about adapting to new situations or dealing with unexpected tactics." Karen pulled up more files on her computer. Every species in the Galactic Council eliminated warfare from their societies centuries ago. They thought it made them more civilized, but it also made them weak. "And humans?" Kate asked. Karen smiled grimly. "We never stopped fighting. Every generation of humans has learned new ways to win battles. We've been at war with someone for our entire history. It made us strong." The proof of Karen's discovery came during the siege of Hegemony Station Alpha, a massive space fortress that controlled trade routes between 5-star systems. The station was supposed to be unbeatable, with walls thick enough to stop any weapon and defense systems that could destroy entire fleets. Captain Ben Foster and his Marines proved that wrong in less than 6 hours. The alien defenders expected a normal siege, ships attacking from outside while ground forces tried to break down the main doors. Instead, Foster's Marines used cutting torches to burn holes in the station's hull. They crawled through air vents and maintenance tunnels. They even pretended to be prisoners being brought aboard by captured alien guards. "Where are they coming from?" shouted Station Commander Velkoth, as human soldiers seemed to appear from everywhere at once. His security cameras showed Marines fighting in corridors that should have been empty. His sensors detected explosions in areas that should have been safe. "They're not following proper attack procedures," his tactical officer reported. "They're using maintenance shafts, storage areas, and even the garbage disposal system to move around the station." Foster's Marines moved through the station like ghosts, appearing where they were not expected and disappearing before the aliens could respond. They used welding equipment to seal doors shut, trapping alien soldiers in rooms. They turned off the lights and fought in darkness that humans could see through but aliens could not. The space station surrendered when Foster's squad captured the main computer center and began broadcasting human music through the station's communication system. The aliens had never heard rock and roll before. The loud, chaotic sound drove them to panic faster than any weapon could have. As more alien worlds fell to human forces, intelligence reports revealed the true scope of galactic oppression. The Council had crushed dozens of species over the centuries, turning proud civilizations into slave races that mined asteroids and built ships for their conquerors. 3 months passed like a storm cloud growing darker each day. Earth's governments worked day and night to prepare for what everyone knew was coming. Factories that once made cars now made weapons. Scientists who studied stars now studied ways to fight alien ships. The alien fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system like death itself. 200 ships dropped out of hyperspace, each one bigger than Earth's largest cities. Their hulls gleamed with energy shields that could stop any weapon humans had ever seen. Fleet Commander Korthon sat on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Glory. He was a member of the Hegemony's warrior class, bred for battle and trained from birth to conquer new worlds. His red eyes scanned the primitive human solar system with the satisfaction of a hunter who had cornered easy prey. "Send the message," he told his communications officer. The alien's voice was deep and harsh like grinding stone. The message reached every human radio and television on Earth within minutes. Korthon's face filled screens around the world as he spoke in perfect English. "People of Earth," he said, "I am Fleet Commander Korthon of the Galactic Hegemony. Your planet and all. Its colonies now belong to us. You have 72 hours to surrender. Your weapons are no match for our technology. Submit now, and some of you may be allowed to live as servants." The message ended, but the alien fleet remained at the edge of the solar system like hungry wolves waiting to attack. Captain Sam Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the USS Guardian, Earth's largest warship. He was 50 years old with gray in his black hair and scars on his hands from the Third World War. Around him, 30 human ships prepared for a battle that seemed impossible to win. "Sir," said Chief Tactical Officer Helen Price, "their ships are 3 times bigger than ours. Our missiles can't get through their energy shields." Sam nodded. He had spent months studying every piece of alien technology that humans had managed to capture or steal. The aliens were right about one thing. Their energy weapons and shields were far beyond anything Earth could build, but they were wrong about something else. They thought that having better technology meant they would win. "Dr. Peter Kim," Sam called to his science officer, "what do you know about their shields?" Dr. Kim was a thin man with quick hands and an even quicker mind. He had been studying alien technology since the first contact. "The shields stop energy weapons perfectly," he said. "Lasers, plasma, particle beams, they just bounce off. But the shields are designed to stop energy, not solid objects moving very fast." Sam smiled for the first time in days. "How fast can our railgun shoot?" "About 10% of light speed, sir. Load every railgun with depleted uranium rounds. Let's see how their fancy shields handle a chunk of metal moving that fast." The battle began when human colonies on the outer planets sent distress signals. Alien ships attacked mining stations and small settlements, expecting quick victories against defenseless humans. They were wrong. Lieutenant Tony Hayes flew his fighter through the asteroid belt near Mars. His ship was small and simple compared to alien fighters, but it was fast and hard to hit. More importantly, Tony had something the aliens did not have: 20 years of experience fighting other humans who wanted to kill him. The alien fighters moved in perfect formation, like they were dancing instead of fighting. Their tactics came from textbooks written by beings who had not fought a real war in centuries. Tony watched them approach and smiled. "All units," he said into his radio, "remember what we practiced. Hit and run. Make them chase you into the asteroids." The alien pilots followed the human fighters into the rocky maze, confident that their superior technology would win the day. They learned too late that technology means nothing if you cannot hit your target. Tony's fighter darted between asteroids, the size of buildings. The alien ships, much larger and less agile, crashed into rocks they could not dodge. Those that survived found themselves facing human fighters attacking from every direction at once. "They move like insects," Tony reported, as he watched alien fighters try to regroup. "They follow patterns. If you break the pattern, they don't know what to do." The first major battle happened on Earth's moon. Colonel Maria Santos led 2,000 Marines against an alien landing force 3 times that size. The aliens came, down in perfect order, setting up their base exactly like their training manuals said they should. Maria had read those same manuals. Human spies had stolen them months ago. "They always put their command center in the middle," she told her sergeants. "They always set up the same way. They think war is like a chess game with rules." The alien base took shape quickly. Protected by energy shields and plasma cannons, it looked strong enough to hold off any attack. The aliens inside felt safe and superior, just like they always did. They had no idea that Maria's Marines were already inside their base. Humans had spent centuries learning to fight wars in any way that worked. They used tricks, lies, and surprise. Attacks. They hid in places enemies did not expect. They made weapons from anything they could find. While the aliens built their base, human soldiers in stolen alien uniforms walked right through the front door. Others dug tunnels under the walls. A few even came down from above, using the moon's low gravity to jump impossible distances. The attack began at midnight, moontime. Explosions lit up the dark side of the moon as human bombs destroyed alien equipment from inside their own base. Marines attacked from every direction, using weapons the aliens had never seen before. "What are those?" an alien officer screamed as human soldiers rushed toward him. "Shotguns," said Sergeant Bill Cooper before he pulled the trigger. The aliens had prepared for energy weapons and guided missiles. They had no defense against humans who ran straight at them with simple firearms and grenades. Their perfect formations broke apart as Marines used tactics that no military academy had ever taught. By dawn, the alien base was in human hands. Colonel Santos stood in the alien command center, looking at star maps that showed the enemy's positions throughout the solar system. "Send a message to Captain Rodriguez," she told her radio operator. "Tell him we have presents for the alien fleet." In space, Captain Sam watched as his small fleet prepared to face the alien armada. The enemy ships moved toward Earth in a perfect formation, their energy shields glowing like small suns. "All ships," Sam said into his communicator. "Remember what we learned from the moon battle. These aliens fight like robots. They follow programs, break the program, and you break them." The USS Guardian's railguns fired first. Chunks of depleted uranium accelerated to incredible speeds, struck the alien shields, and passed right through them like they were not even there. The metal slugs punched holes in alien hulls that energy weapons could never have made. "Impossible!" Fleet Commander Korthon shouted as his ships began taking damage. "Their weapons are primitive. Our shields should stop everything." But the shields did not stop solid metal moving at 10% of light speed. One by one, alien ships began to die as human railguns found their targets. The space battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, more than half the alien fleet was floating wreckage. The survivors limped back to the edge of the solar system, their perfect formation broken and their confidence shattered. Fleet Commander Korthon sat in his damaged command chair, staring at reports he could not believe. A primitive species, with inferior technology, had defeated the greatest fleet in the galaxy. "How?" he whispered to himself. "How is this possible?" His science officer, a young hegemony warrior named Vexoth, looked up from his instruments with fear in his eyes. "Sir," he said, "I have been studying the human battle tactics. They do not fight like any species we have ever encountered." "Explain." Korthon growled. "They do not follow standard military doctrine. They use deception, surprise attacks, and weapons we did not expect. They fight with emotion as well as logic. They seem to enjoy battle, even when they are losing." Korthon felt something he had never experienced before in his long military career. For the first time in his life, he was afraid. On Earth, Captain Sam Rodriguez looked at the damage reports from the battle. Humanity had lost 12 ships and 3,000 brave men and women, but they had proven something important to the galaxy and to themselves. Humans could fight, and more importantly, humans could win. "Send a message to all colonies," Sam told his communications officer. "Tell them we are not victims. We are not going to surrender, and we are not going to hide." He paused and looked out at the stars where alien ships were retreating. "Tell them that Earth is just getting started." The crystal towers of Vex Prime reached into the purple sky like giant fingers. Inside the tallest tower, 12 different alien races sat around a massive table. Their meeting room was bigger than most human cities. The walls showed pictures of stars and planets that belonged to their empire. Admiral Zethkar stood at the front of the room. His blue skin had silver marks that showed his high rank. His 4 arms moved as he talked about the newest problem the galaxy faced. "Friends," he said in a voice that sounded like grinding metal, "we have a new species to deal with. They call themselves humans. They come from a small blue planet called Earth." The other aliens looked at their data screens. Pictures of humans appeared. 2 arms, 2 legs, and soft pink skin. They looked so simple compared to the great races of the galaxy. Queen Hasrak clicked her sharp teeth together. She looked like a giant insect with black eyes that never blinked. "They are so small," she said. "So weak. How did they even learn to fly between stars?" Commander Veltosh laughed. His body was made of living crystal that changed colors when he was happy. "Look at their weapons," he said, pointing at the screen. "They still shoot metal bullets. They use fire to make their ships fly. My people stopped using such things 1,000 years ago." The room filled with more laughter. The hegemony had ruled the galaxy for so long that they forgot what it was like to fight real wars. They had energy shields that could stop laser beams. They had plasma weapons that could melt mountains. What could humans do with their simple guns and rockets? Far away from Vex Prime, Lieutenant Commander Jake Martinez walked through the halls of the USS Defiance. The ship was humanity's pride, their first vessel built for traveling to other stars. But compared to alien ships, it looked like a toy made of metal and dreams. Jake was 35 years old with black hair and serious brown eyes. He had fought in 3 wars on Earth before joining the space program. The scars on his hands told stories of battles where humans fought other humans with everything they had. "Sir?" called Chief Engineer Lisa Brooks as she hurried to catch up with him. Lisa was a small woman with red hair tied back in a tight bun. She knew every bolt and wire on the ship. "The alien station just sent us docking instructions. They want us to land in Bay 94. Jake nodded. "Any word from Communications Officer Ryan Clark?" "He's been listening to their radio signals," Lisa said. "The locals are calling us the soft ones in their language. Not exactly a warm welcome." Dr. Amy Foster joined them at the airlock. She was the ship's medical officer, a tall woman with kind eyes who had spent years studying alien biology. "I've been reading about their species," she said. "The ones we're meeting today have never lost a war. They think fighting is just about having better weapons." Jake looked out the small window at the alien station. It was 10 times bigger than anything humans had ever built. Ships that looked like metal birds flew around it. Everything was smooth and perfect, like it was made by machines instead of living beings. "They invited us here to talk about trade," Jake said, "but something feels wrong about this." The USS Defiance docked with a soft bump. Jake and his team put on their best uniforms and walked through the airlock. The alien station was full of creatures from different worlds. Some had scales, others had fur. A few looked like walking plants, but they all stared at the humans like they were looking at pets. Ambassador Krextal met them at the docking bay. He was tall and thin with green skin and 3 eyes. His clothes were made of some material that seemed to move on its own. When he spoke, his voice was polite but cold. "Welcome, humans," he said. "We are pleased to meet such a young species. Please follow me to the meeting room." As they walked through the station, Jake noticed things that worried him. The walls had no damage from any fights. The security guards looked bored, like they had never seen real danger. Everything was too clean, too perfect. These aliens had not fought a real war in a very long time. The meeting room was huge, with a table that could seat 50 beings. Only 5 aliens sat there, but Jake could tell they thought they were being generous by meeting with humans at all. "We have studied your world," said Ambassador Krextal as he sat down. "Earth has many good things. Metals in your asteroids, water on your planets. We would like to help you use these things properly." Jake listened as the alien explained their offer. They would give humans some basic technology. In return, they wanted the rights to mine Earth's asteroid belt and build bases on human colonies. "You see?" said another alien with 4 arms and blue scales. "Your people are not ready for such complex work. You still fight wars with each other. You use emotions to make decisions. This is not how advanced beings behave." Jake kept his face calm, but inside he was getting angry. These aliens talked about humans like they were children who needed to be taken care of. They offered a few simple tools in exchange for everything valuable that Earth owned. "We need time to think about your offer," Jake said finally. "Of course," Ambassador Krextal smiled with too many teeth. "Take all the time you need. But remember, the galaxy is a dangerous place for species that cannot protect themselves." That night, Ryan Clark worked late in the communications room. He had learned some of the alien languages during the trip, and now he was listening to signals that the aliens thought humans could not understand. What he heard made his blood run cold. "The humans are even weaker than we thought," said one voice. "Their ship has no real weapons. Their planet has no orbital defenses." "The Council has already decided," said another. "We will take their system within the year. The mining rights will be split between the hegemony and the Crystal Empire. What about the humans themselves? Asked a third voice. Some can be kept as workers. The rest, there was a sound like laughter. Well, the galaxy is large. There is room for only useful species. Ryan recorded everything and ran to find Jake. When Jake heard the recording, his face went hard like stone. Get Lisa and Amy, he said quietly. We're leaving now. As the USS Defiance pulled away from the alien station, Jake looked back at the massive structure. The aliens inside thought they had met a primitive species that would be easy to conquer. They saw humans as soft, emotional, and weak. They had no idea what they had just done. They had just made enemies of a species that had spent its entire history learning how to fight. Humans knew how to win wars not because they had the best weapons, but because they never gave up. They fought with their hearts as well as their minds. The aliens would learn this lesson soon enough. But by then, it would be too late.